Once upon a time, if you wanted a superior version of a Transformers figure, you imported it from Japan, because Hasbro would usually cut a lot of things from a Takara release for the sake of budget. Paint apps are missing, sometimes even some accessories would be missing. However, once in a blue moon, the normally more cartoon accurate and more lavishly deco Takara releases would actually look or function worse than the eventual Hasbro release. It's very rare, but there's a few different reasons why it happens, so today we're going to examine just a few of them. This is 10 times the Hasbro version of a Transformer came out better than the Takara, and we're going to start with a pretty minor one, but it was significant at the time. When Takara was doing their Encore line, they had just a laundry list of Transformer toys to do naturally, but as usual, the 84 cast took priority, which meant Jazz came out as well. Unfortunately, the version of Jazz that they used was left over from the Generation 2 version of the mold, and that mold started to suffer from a weird combination of mold degradations, which also included a slight smirk across his face, which in the Takara version became a fairly ugly grimace. Now, in the American version, the grimace is still there. It wasn't until later releases, the Ricochet repaint actually, where you actually got a corrected face. However, there were also problems with the alignment of the windshields in the vehicle mode, which meant the vehicle mode didn't actually come together all the way. The Hasbro version was actually nice enough to fix that. Would have been nice to get an extra face, but hey, I will take one of the modes looking good over neither of the modes looking good. Like I said, a minor one to start, but this is just gonna get us going. Admittedly, this one is more subjective, but it is important to me. When Hasbro and Takara both did Computron box sets, they both had very different ideas about what they would be. They are by far the most divergent sets from Combiner Wars. Different molds were chosen, different priorities in color schemes and sculpting, and most importantly to me, Afterburner, or Afterbreaker in America, had very different decos. In Japan, it was done in a bright red color that largely matched the rest of his team. Because yes, indeed, Afterburner was colored red in some episodes of the Transformers cartoon. The problem with this is that when you combined Computron from the Takara release, the end result would have red, white, and dark red limbs and body, and then just one random orange and brown leg. It made nose cones stand out very, very badly. The thing is, the orange of the American version of Afterburner brings a little bit more balance to the team and keeps nose cone from looking too off amongst his peers. And also, it's more accurate to the original toy and gives the set a little bit more diversity. It's an important one to me because I love Afterburner particularly, but I do think it makes a far more superior team, at least a little bit more color diverse one. What is not as subjective is cartoon accuracy, and usually Takara is the king. However, let's be honest, with a show like Armada, a lot can go wrong, and even the toy deco from Takara can have a major misstep. The Hasbro version is actually fairly show accurate, done in dark brown and the white color that makes up the primary color scheme of the figure. However, for whatever reason, on the Takara version of the figure, that dark brown that is accurate to the cartoon is replaced with kind of a slightly translucent gunmetal. It makes a very different look for the figure, very pale compared to the Hasbro release, since the white plastic is the same. It's a strange error on Takara's part. Now, granted, it could have been based on a production version, like an early version of what they were going to do with Hoist's color scheme that Hasbro then got to correct, but for whatever reason, it ended up gray instead of brown. And it's the only figure I know of in the Micron Legends line that ended up with such a weird discrepancy. So, yeah, on a very, very rare occasion, Hasbro can actually be more show accurate. Takara just has to really screw up to make it happen. I might lose some people on this one because it is a distinct feature of the line. However, there is a problem to it. So, in Transformer Prime's Japanese version, Arms Micron, the entire theme of the toys was to customize them yourself, or rather let the kid customize them, which came down to which even included like the Arms Microns, which you had to build yourself. They even had like tips on how to turn like normal household items into accessories for your Transformers or additions to the Arms Microns themselves. But the most prominent feature is the fact that the Takara releases of these toys had almost no painted detail on them. Usually it was just the face and the stuff they couldn't avoid, like, the translucent plastic that makes up the windshields. Otherwise, the toys are fairly barren. All of the deco, at least the primary part of the deco, was relegated to stickers, which you were encouraged to, mess with as you will. It even came with a few stickers that didn't really have anything in the instructions for. They were just optional items for you to use, and the idea was every kid's, Transformers Prime toys were a little bit unique. Now, the problem to that is, it's a nice idea in concept, but a lot of these stickers were not really well fit. You'd get a lot that overhung parts incorrectly, a lot that creased poorly because they didn't curve in the right direction. It's a novel idea, but unless you're willing to sit there with an X-Acto knife and correct your sticker sheet by hand as you go, it ended up with some less desirable looking figures as a result. In the end, I'd just rather you paint the toy. Like, I understand the idea of customizing, but paint the toy first and then give us some optional stickers to kind of do with whatever we will. I think that gets the point across without making a toy look pretty barren and bland. And overall, hey, you lose the sticker sheet or the factory forgot to put it in, you're out your whole deco. That doesn't really seem very good to me. Show accuracy is good, but sometimes it is just wrong. Super Link Galvatron. So the toy itself is fine. It's show accurate. It actually looks the way it does in the cartoon. There's nothing wrong with that. But we do admit there are details about it that just don't really look all that right. This blue crown that he still retained from his Megatron form, it looks like he just came from a birthday party at a fast food restaurant. It just doesn't fit in with the rest of his dark G1 Galvatron inspired color scheme. Then you look at the American version. Yes, it is not show accurate. What it is a loving homage to G1 Galvatron, the likes of which we had never seen. Keep in mind, Galvatron hadn't had a toy since his original in 1986 at this point. At this point, because of the dark purple and gray color scheme of the Energon figure, it's technically the more accurate G1 Galvatron than the original toy in its mostly gray. The abdomens were painted correctly, so that all the squares stood out. The crown was now black instead of blue. The colors were rich and vibrant. Oh, man. It's a toy I regret selling because at the time, I just didn't have space for such a huge figure. But it's a beautiful figure. Absolutely gorgeous glow-up from the original Takara release. It's not accurate to the show, but sometimes it just plain looks better. Looking better is one thing, functioning better is a completely different story. So, back to RID 2001, we should say, and we're looking at the Rail Racer team. Now, the Japanese version used a lot of translucent plastic in order to make sure that the windows of the train were all translucent. The windows, remember, were very tiny details, so this seems like a little bit of an overkill, especially when you realize that meant the vast majority of the surface of the vehicle mode had to be painted in order to make those windshields pop. The result was a lot of sloppy paintwork and a lot of smaller deco apps that just weren't up to Takara's usual quality. The team itself is just notable for the Japanese version having a lot of issues with the deco. And of course, translucent plastic, especially when used for the combiner combination parts, didn't really last well over time, especially if you left it combined. So, when you look at the American version with all solid plastic and individually painted windows, it meant you didn't have all of the sloppiness going on with the Takara version, and what ended up being like tiny little pointless details, because you really couldn't even tell they were translucent in the Japanese release. You actually got nice looking windows in the American version. You know, you got all these little deco spots that were actually like really nice looking. They even went and turned some of the flat colors into metallic colors. So there's a little bit more flash to the American versions as well. Now, it's a shame they apparently sold terribly. Hasbro's gone on record as they're never doing that team again in any color scheme. But if you were around in 2001, in order to actually find those on the toy shelves, you were in for a treat. Probably one of the best, all integrated combiners we ever got. Time to talk high-end. Let's go to Masterpiece, and we'll look at Takara's release of Soundwave, and it's a completely fine release. It's a Masterpiece version of the original Soundwave toy, essentially. Soundwave looks great, gets one cassette. And then Takara decided that the additional cassettes would be sold in 2 packs after the fact. Okay, fine. That's nothing wrong with that inherently. However, the 2 packs, even back then, seemed outrageously expensive for what they are. Keep in mind, the Masterpiece cassettes are compatible with G1 Soundwave. They're the same size cassettes. So when you look at 2 of these cassettes and they wanted like $60 for just 2 of them, vintage ones complete will cost you $30. These were brand new, all plastic ones. It just felt ridiculous. So when Hasbro imported it over and the box included all 5 cassettes that Takara released, it was a blessing, And the only thing we had to sacrifice was the color of his visor. Hasbro wanted yellow for toy accuracy. Takara wanted red for cartoon accuracy. And that's really the only real difference. What you ended up getting was an affordable package of all of these different figures. Soundwave, 5 of his cassettes, and a billion accessories. Now, granted, it's really just a matter of production and just convenience, really. Because in the end, the Takara toys are basically the same as the Hasbro ones in this case, but getting them all together just felt so much better and more convenient. And honestly, I don't know why Takara just didn't do that in the first place unless they were scared of the price point. Certainly not scared of Masterpiece price points these days. Still, it was a great set. It was a very good set to get. And yeah, just a wonderful thing for Hasbro to throw in instead of like piecemealing it like Takara did. I feel like Prime's criticism is going to be divisive. I think more of you are going to be on board for this one. When Takara started doing Classics and Universe 2.0 figures themselves, they released them under the name Henkei. And Henkei figures all had one feature in common that was really head-scratching for most fans watching from afar across the ocean. For whatever reason, they decided that a lot of these toys needed to have chrome parts. Okay, fine. And some of them made sense, don't get me wrong, and then others were just ridiculously weird and like strangely for Takara, highly inaccurate. You had chrome parts on Grimlock that were never chrome on his G1 toy. It just made him look extremely strange in both modes. And I think the strangest one was going to be Universe 2 Galvatron, whose tank turret was chrome, and then an otherwise, as cartoon accurate as that mold allows, robot mode, ends up being ruined by this massive chrome shoulder that just sticks up out of nowhere. To this day, I'm not even sure why Takara did it in the first place, because, yeah, it's highly inaccurate to the cartoons, which goes against all their usual design philosophy, but it also just looked really weird, like it was placed haphazardly. No real logic, rhyme, or reason to it whatsoever. It was chrome for the sake of chrome, and it brought a lot of really good toys for the time down several notches. You look at the clean versions that America got, yeah, the decos aren't as cartoon or toy accurate, but you don't have chrome to scratch and flake on you all over the place. Let's go back to car robots in RID for the leader of the, well, Destrongers or Predacons, take your pick. So, Gigatron in Japan was kind of a marvel. The first time since Six Shot that a transforming toy had 6 modes to go through. Really, really cool, right? Well, cooler was when they remolded the toy and repainted it into Devil Gigatron. A few extra pegs and ports, and this thing could form 10 modes. Unheard of, and still unbeaten to this day. That doesn't even include the semi-canon modes that the designers showed off after the fact, like the Devil Ostrich, and it definitely doesn't include the endless number of fan modes the toy is capable of. When the toy line came to America, Hasbro had the advantage of being able to use the finalized version of that mold for RID Megatron, meaning it had all the pegs and ports of Devil Gigatron. So, for that color scheme, America got the definitive version of the figure. RID Megatron, the imported version of Gigatron, was capable of all 10 modes, even though the instructions didn't include things like the boat and the elephant. But it was there, and it was a wonderful thing. Just, because you kind of got to be the first ones to actually see all those modes in the black and the purple. So it was actually really cool. So that is an advantage of the timing of RID. Getting to go second after Takara let them get away with a far better version of the original figure. But if we're talking improvements over a Takara release, there is only one king, and oh, I'm sure he loves to be on top. We are talking Masterpiece Starscream, and man. So, the original version of Masterpiece Starscream, there's a lot of interference to that toy. The original design was actually fairly accurate to how Starscream worked and functioned in the original toy line and cartoon, save no part forming, of course. But they brought in an alternate designer who decided to put real-world accuracy of the vehicle mode ahead of everything else, leading to a lot of very strange design choices, a very strange color choice in this really dark sea green color, and for whatever reason, a strange plastic that was more akin to what you'd find on like a military model kit. Compared to a normal Transformer, it was very brittle, and a lot of MPO3s broke very easily. It was just a really unpleasant toy, unfortunately, between just a very inaccurate color scheme, a lot of additional kibble that was unnecessary, and breakage issues. And then you get the Hasbro release. Not only is Starscream done in his traditional colors, but there is still a level of real-world accuracy to it with a black wash to bring out a lot of the panel lining details and give him a little bit of a slightly burnt from, speed kind of look to him, which isn't too bad. But the big thing to him is that the plastic is different and a much higher quality. You don't ever get that anymore, where Hasbro used higher quality plastic than Takara. That doesn't happen anymore. Well, it happened in this case. In every facet, the American version of Starscream was superior to the Masterpiece version. Color, accuracy, and yeah, that plastic quality. If you waited for the American version on that toy, you won. And I don't think there's any Masterpiece that was so quickly replaced. I can remember eBay loaded loaded with dark green Starscreams once the American one was announced. It was kind of an amazing thing to witness. And an amazing spot for us to end off on. Now, I personally can't think of an example stronger than that, but, there's been thousands of Transformers toys. I can't possibly remember them all. So if you can remember one that was, in particular, better than what Takara did here when it was brought to America, please let me know in the comments below. Maybe if we get enough of these, we can do this list again at some point. But for now, that's just 10 of the times Hasbro made a better product than Takara. You don't get it anymore because they want to do the same figure worldwide. And man, does it take some of the flavor out of this collecting thing.